The day my daughter told me I wasn't invited to her wedding felt like watching 30 years of motherhood get erased with a single sentence. "Mom, I think it's better if you're not there." 7 words that hollowed me out completely. But life has a strange way of bringing things full circle. Sometimes the path back to each other is found in the most unexpected places, like discovering your estranged daughter is planning to get married at the very estate you've quietly managed for. The past 5 years, this is the story of how a mother's love, a daughter's pride, and the walls we build between us can sometimes come crumbling down in the most unexpected ways. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches, you make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Eleanor Barnes. I've spent the last 5 years as the property manager for the Hawthorne Estate, a sprawling historical mansion nestled in the Berkshire Mountains of Massachusetts. Most people think of property managers as the folks who collect rent and arrange for leaky faucets to be fixed, but Hawthorne is different. It's a premier wedding venue now, and I oversee everything, from coordinating with wedding planners to managing the ground staff who keep the gardens in magazine-worthy condition year-round. Every morning at 6, I make the short drive from my modest cottage to the main house, stopping at Miller's Bakery for black coffee and a cranberry scone. There's something calming about being the first one to walk through those grand oak doors, hearing the gentle echo of my footsteps against marble floors before the day's commotion begins. I've made a life here, a quiet one, but mine. I know every creaking floorboard, every temperamental door hinge. I can tell you exactly which corner of the rose garden gets the perfect morning light, and which section of the grand ballroom has the best acoustics. Brides pay thousands for my insights now, hanging on my every word about lighting and layout. The irony doesn't escape me. My own wedding 34 years ago was in my parents' backyard in Deerfield. Frank and I were barely 22. We had a plastic trellis, potluck dishes, and my cousin's band playing covers. We were young, in love, and stupidly certain that passion would be enough to weather any storm that came our way. I didn't understand. Then that love is the easy part. It's the living that gets complicated. Frank was a dreamer, always chasing the next big idea. Organic farm to table before it was trendy. A food truck business before they lined every city street, importing specialty. Olive oils when grocery stores still only carried the basics. None of them ever quite materialized into the success he envisioned. Meanwhile, I kept us afloat with my accounting job at the local high school, making sure the mortgage got paid, and our daughter Olivia had everything she needed. Olivia. Just thinking about her feels like pressing on a bruise that never quite heals. She came into the world with her father's fiery determination and my stubborn practicality, a combination that made her both brilliant and unbending. Even as a little girl, she'd set her mind on something and pursue it with an intensity that sometimes frightened me. When she was 8, she decided she wanted to learn violin. Not just learn it, master it. She'd practice until her fingers bled, refusing to stop until the melody sounded exactly right. By 12, she was performing with the regional youth orchestra. By 16, she was being scouted by conservatories. Was so proud of her. Too proud, maybe. I pushed when I should have listened, insisted when I should have asked. All because I wanted her to have the opportunities I never did. Frank was the soft touch between us. "Let her breathe, Ellie," he'd say. "She knows what she wants." I'd counter that she was just a child, that children need guidance, boundaries. What I didn't say was that I was terrified she'd inherit his tendency to chase rainbows instead of building foundations. The cracks in our marriage started small, almost imperceptible. A tense exchange over dinner, a sigh when he'd announce another business venture, separate bedrooms, just until your snoring improves. Before we knew it, we were living parallel lives under the same roof, connected only by our fierce love for our daughter. Olivia noticed, of course. Children always do. She started spending more time with her violin, less time at home. When she was accepted to Juilliard at 17, I was both ecstatic and heartbroken. My baby was achieving her dreams, but she was also escaping. The summer, before she left, the arguments between Frank and me escalated. Money was tight. His latest venture, a specialty coffee roastery, had failed spectacularly, leaving us with nearly $30,000 in debt. I wanted to take out a second mortgage. He wanted to use Olivia's college fund, insisting we could replenish it before she needed it. She has a full scholarship, he'd argue. This is just for living expenses. The breaking point came when I discovered he'd already withdrawn $10,000 without telling me. I still remember standing in our kitchen, bank statement trembling, in my hand, feeling like the floor had disappeared from under me. "How could you?" I'd whispered. Not yelled. People always assume these pivotal moments involve shouting, but sometimes the most devastating conversations happen in whispers. "I was going to tell you," he said, not meeting my eyes. After I paid it back. "With what money, Frank? The money from the coffee shop that's closing next month? Or the money from the olive oil business that never made a single profit?" His face hardened. "At least I tried to build something. When's the last time?" "You took a risk, Eleanor. When's the last time you did anything but count pennies and worry?" Olivia had walked in just then, violin case clutched against her chest like a shield. The look on her face. I'll never forget it. Not anger. Not even disappointment. Just a cold, detached assessment, like she was finally seeing us clearly for the first time. "I don't need the money," she said quietly. "Keep it. Use it. I don't care." I tried to explain, but she just shook her head and walked upstairs. The next morning she was gone, moved in with her best friend Sarah's family for the remaining weeks, before college. She left a note. "I need space. Please respect that." Frank moved out 3 days later. The divorce was finalized by Christmas. For the first year, Olivia would call occasionally. Brief, formal conversations about her classes, her roommate, the New York subway system. She came home once that summer, staying just 2 nights before accepting an offer to tour with a string ensemble in Europe. She hugged me when she left, but it felt mechanical, like she was performing a duty rather than expressing affection. The calls grew less frequent after that. She switched to texts, then just holiday cards. By the time she graduated, I was lucky to get a monthly email update. She took a position with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, bought a condo in Lincoln Park, built a life I glimpsed only through the occasional social media post or secondhand update from a mutual acquaintance. I tried reaching out. Birthday gifts, handwritten letters, invitations to visit. Some went unanswered. Others received polite but distant responses. "Thanks, but I'm really busy right now. Maybe next year." I appreciate the thought. Frank remarried 5 years after our divorce, a yoga instructor 15 years his junior. They moved to Colorado to open a wellness retreat. He still speaks to Olivia regularly, according to the Christmas card he sends me each year with a family update I never asked for but secretly crave. As for me, after 28 years in accounting, the school district restructured. They called it early retirement opportunity. I called it being pushed out to save on pension costs. At 57, I found myself adrift. The house where we'd raised Olivia felt too empty, too full of ghosts. I put it on the market and started looking for something new. The job listing for Hawthorne Estate caught my eye by accident. I wasn't qualified on paper. My experience was in numbers, not event planning. But the final line of the posting read, "Seeking someone with exceptional attention to detail and a talent for turning chaos into order." That at least I could offer. Mr. Reynolds, the owner, saw something in me during that interview. "The estate has been in my family for generations," he explained, white hair gleaming in the sunlight streaming through the leaded windows. "But times change. We need to adapt or lose it entirely. I don't need someone who knows weddings. I need someone who understands value, who can see both the forest and the trees. 5 years later, I've transformed Hawthorne into one of the most sought-after wedding venues in New England. Couples book 2 years in advance. Martha Stewart Weddings featured us in their spring issue. Mr. Reynolds, now in his 80s, has largely retired to Florida, leaving me to run the place with near-complete autonomy. I was reviewing next season's booking calendar when Jessica, my assistant, knocked on my office door. "Eleanor? The Mitchell-Clark wedding planner is here for her walkthrough. Should I send her up, or will you meet her in the garden?" I glanced. At my watch. Right on time. Impressive, considering most wedding planners ran perpetually behind schedule. "I'll meet her by the fountain in 5 minutes," I said, closing my laptop. What was the bride's name again? Jessica checked her tablet. "Olivia Mitchell, marrying a Robert Clark. 200 guests, full orchestra, June 15th ceremony." My hand froze on the desk. Olivia Mitchell, it couldn't be. "Is there a photo in the file?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jessica nodded, turning the tablet toward me. And there she was, my daughter's face smiling back at me, arm-wrapped. Around a tall man with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair. My daughter was getting married. Here, at Hawthorne. And she had no idea her estranged mother was the one who would be orchestrating every detail of her perfect day. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I sat in my office for several minutes after Jessica left, staring at the tablet she'd handed me. The photo of Olivia looked recent, her chestnut hair now shoulder-length instead of the waist-length waves she'd maintained throughout college. There were fine lines around her eyes I hadn't seen before. She looked happy, relaxed in a way I couldn't remember seeing in years. The man beside her, Robert, had an arm draped casually around her shoulders. He was older than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s to Olivia's 30. But his smile reached his eyes in a way that suggested genuine warmth. She'd found someone steady by the looks of him, someone grounded. My thoughts raced. Should I recuse myself? Ask Jessica to handle this client? But that would require explanation, and the thought of sharing this complicated history with my staff made my chest tighten. Besides, Hawthorne was my responsibility. Mr. Reynolds trusted me to maintain its reputation personally. The more pressing question was whether to tell Olivia immediately or let her discover on her own that her estranged mother was the mastermind behind her wedding venue. Neither option felt right. I smoothed my blazer, tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, and headed toward the garden fountain. With each step across the manicured lawn, I rehearsed opening lines in my head. "Surprise! It's me!" Too flippant. "I believe we've met before." Too cold. "Olivia, I had no idea." Perhaps the simple truth was best. As I rounded the corner of the hedge maze, I spotted 2 women by the tiered stone fountain. One was Melissa Winters, a wedding planner I'd worked with several times before, efficient, detail-oriented, with a talent for calming even the most anxious brides. The other, with her back to me, was unmistakably my daughter. Even from behind, I'd know her anywhere. The way she stood with her weight shifted slightly to one hip, the deliberate way she gestured when making a point, the slight tilt of her head when listening intently. Some things don't change, even when everything else does. "Good morning," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. "Welcome to Hawthorne." They both turned. Melissa smiled and stepped forward. "Eleanor, wonderful to see you again. This is our bride, Olivia Mitchell. Olivia, this is Eleanor Barnes, the property manager I was telling you about. She's absolutely brilliant, knows every inch of this place." Olivia's expression shifted from polite interest to shock in an instant. The color drained from her face as our eyes met. For a moment that stretched like eternity, neither of us spoke. "You two know each other?" Melissa asked, glancing between us. Olivia recovered first. "We've met," she said tersely. Then to me, "I didn't realize you worked here." "For about 5 years now," I replied, fighting to keep my voice even. Melissa, sensing the tension but misreading its source, jumped in. Well, that's perfect then. You'll be in excellent hands, Olivia. Eleanor has transformed over 60 weddings from nice to absolutely unforgettable. Just last month, she saved the Henderson ceremony when a thunderstorm hit by— "I need a minute," Olivia interrupted, already backing away. "Excuse me." She turned and walked briskly toward the rose garden, disappearing behind the tall hedges that bordered the east lawn. Melissa looked bewildered. "Did I say something wrong?" I sighed. "It's not you. Olivia is my daughter." Her eyes widened. "Oh, I had no idea. She never mentioned— that is, she listed her father as her family contact. Of course she had. Frank would be walking her down the aisle, while I hadn't even known she was engaged." "It's complicated," I said, the understatement of the decade. "Would you mind giving us a few minutes? I think we need to talk privately." Melissa nodded quickly. "Of course. I'll wait in the main hall. Take all the time you need." I found Olivia sitting on a stone bench beneath the arbor, her back rigid, staring straight ahead at nothing in particular. She didn't look up as I approached. "I didn't know," I said simply, stopping a few feet away. "About your engagement. Or that you'd chosen Hawthorne. I only saw your name in the booking calendar this morning." She remained silent, jaw tight. "Congratulations," I added softly. "He looks like a good man." "He is," she finally replied, still not looking at me. "He's a music professor at Northwestern. We met at a faculty recital 3 years ago. A small offering of information. I took it gratefully. I'm happy for you, Olivia. Truly." She finally turned to face me. "Were you going to tell me? Or were you planning to just— what? Orchestrate my entire wedding day from the shadows? I only found out minutes before walking out to meet you," I explained. "I hadn't decided yet, but I wouldn't have hidden from you. No." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "That would be a first." The accusation stung. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means you were always hiding, Mom. Behind schedules and practical concerns and Dad's failures. You never showed up, not really." I sat down heavily on the bench beside her, leaving space between us. "That's not fair, isn't it? When I got into Juilliard, your first concern was the cost. When I landed my position with the symphony, you asked about the benefits package. When I called to tell you I was seeing Robert, you asked about his financial stability. I was trying to look out for you," I said, hearing the defensiveness in my own voice. "I wanted you to be secure." "No, you wanted me to be safe from turning into Dad. But I'm not Dad, and I'm not you either." She stood abruptly. "This isn't going to work. We'll find another venue." "Olivia, wait." I rose too. "Don't do that. Hawthorne is perfect for what you've planned. The acoustics in the ballroom for your orchestra friends, the garden for the ceremony. You chose it for good reasons. It's impossible now." "Why? Because I'm here? Because after all these years, you still can't stand to have me involved in your life?" She whirled to face me, eyes flashing. "You think that's what this is about? That I'm some petulant child holding a grudge? You really don't get it, do you?" "Then help me understand," I pleaded. "Because from where I stand, I've spent a decade trying to reach you, and you've spent a decade pushing me away. You never saw me," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You saw a project, something to manage and direct. Even now, you're trying to manage this situation, find the practical solution that lets you stay in control." The accusation hit home, in a way I wasn't prepared for. Had I really been so blind? Before I could respond, Melissa appeared at the entrance to the rose garden, looking apologetic. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but Olivia, Robert just called. He's waiting at the front entrance." Olivia straightened, composing herself with visible effort. "Thank you. I'll be right there." She turned back to me. "I need to go." "Olivia, please, don't make any decisions right now. Take some time to think." She hesitated, then gave a curt nod. "Fine. I'll discuss it with Robert and Melissa, but I'm not promising anything." I watched her walk away, back straight, steps measured, just like when she was 7 and stormed away after I'd insisted she practice violin before watching TV. Just like when she was 16 and I'd questioned her decision to apply only to music schools. Just like when she was 20 and I'd tried to warn her about a boyfriend who clearly wasn't good enough for her. Had I really spent her entire life trying to control outcomes instead of supporting her journey? Later that afternoon, I received an email from Melissa. "Eleanor. After careful consideration, Olivia and Robert have decided to proceed with Hawthorne as their venue. However, Olivia has requested that Jessica serve as their primary contact going forward. I hope you understand. Additionally, Robert has asked if you would be available for coffee tomorrow. Just him, not Olivia. 2 p.m. at Westfields on Main Street. If that works for you, please let me know. Best. Melissa." I stared at the screen, relief mixing with hurt. They were keeping Hawthorne, but Olivia was keeping her distance. And now her fiancé wanted to meet. Why? To size up his future mother-in-law? To deliver some message Olivia couldn't bear to deliver herself? I typed a simple response. "I'll be there." That night in my cottage, I pulled out the box I kept on the top shelf of my closet. Inside were the remnants of motherhood, Olivia's first violin recital program, crayon drawings from elementary school, the acceptance letter from Juilliard, newspaper clippings from her performances with the youth orchestra, and later, the Chicago Symphony. Beneath them all was a photograph I hadn't looked at in years. Olivia at 16, playing her violin on our back porch as the sun set behind her. I'd captured the moment impulsively, struck by how the golden light seemed to radiate from her rather than illuminate her from outside. It was the last summer before everything fell apart. Before Frank's betrayal with the college fund. Before the divorce. Before the distance between Olivia and me stretched from a crack to a chasm. Looking at it now, I realized something I'd missed all these years. In the photo, Olivia wasn't performing. There was no sheet music, no rigid posture. Her eyes were closed, a small smile playing on her lips as her bow danced across the strings. She was playing for herself, lost in the pure joy of creation, had I ever truly seen that joy? Or had I been too focused on where it might lead, what opportunities it might open, how it might secure her future? Tomorrow I would meet the man my daughter loved. Perhaps through him I might find a way back to her, not as the mother who knew best, but as the mother who was finally ready to listen. Westfield's Cafe occupied a corner of Main Street in a century-old building with exposed brick walls and tall windows that flooded the space with afternoon light. I arrived 20 minutes early, a habit I'd never managed to break. Being prompt had been my armor throughout life, one less thing anyone could hold against me. I chose a table near the back, angled so I could see the entrance. The coffee shop hummed with the gentle murmur of conversation and the hiss of the espresso machine. College students with laptops, business people on lunch breaks, a pair of elderly women sharing a scone and laughing softly. Normal people living normal lives, unburdened by the weight of a decade's estrangement. The bell above. The door chimed at exactly 1:58 p.m. Robert Clark stood in the doorway scanning the room. He was taller in person than he'd appeared in the photo, with broad shoulders and a confident posture that suggested comfort in his own skin. His salt and pepper hair was neatly trimmed, and he wore wire-rimmed glasses that gave him a scholarly appearance fitting for a music professor. Our eyes met and he smiled, warm, genuine, lacking any trace of the tension I'd been anticipating. He walked directly to my table. "Eleanor?" He extended his hand. Robert Clark, thank you for meeting me. His handshake was firm but not aggressive. I gestured to the chair across from me. Thank you for reaching out. I've already ordered, I added as he sat down. But the barista knows to watch for you. Perfect. He settled in, folding his hands on the table. The silence stretched between us for a beat too long before he spoke again. I should start by saying Olivia doesn't know I'm here. My stomach tightened. I see. No, I don't think you do. His tone remained gentle. I'm not here behind her back. I'm here because I love her, and I want our wedding day to be everything she deserves. Right now, that seems impossible without addressing the elephant in the room. Me, I said flatly. Your relationship, he corrected. Or lack thereof. A young barista approached with my Americano and looked expectantly at Robert. Just black coffee, please, he said with a smile. Medium roast if you have it. She nodded and retreated. Robert turned his attention fully back to me, studying my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. I resisted the urge. Olivia told me some things about your history, he said carefully. But I've found that stories often have more than one side. I'd like to hear yours. What exactly did she tell you? I wasn't about to bare my soul without knowing the parameters of the conversation. His eyes softened with understanding. That you pushed her too hard. That you prioritized security over passion. That you never approved of her choices. And that you and her father had a messy divorce that left her feeling like collateral damage. Each point landed like a small blow. Not because they were false, but because they contained just enough truth to sting. She also told me, he continued, that you never missed a recital, that you worked extra hours to pay for her private lessons when her father's business ventures fell through, that you kept every newspaper clipping and program from every performance, that you still send birthday cards every year, even though she rarely responds. I blinked, surprised. She told you that? Olivia sees more than she lets on. The barista returned with his coffee. He thanked her, took a sip, and continued. She's not angry at you, Eleanor. She's protecting herself. From what? I never wanted anything but the best for her. The best according to whom? He asked gently. Your vision of her life or hers? The question hung in the air between us. I'd asked myself the same thing last night, staring at that photograph of Olivia lost in her music. I wanted her to be secure, I said finally. To never have to lie awake at night wondering how bills would get paid. To never have to choose between following a dream and keeping a roof over her head. Is that so wrong? Of course not. But dreams matter too. And sometimes the fear of losing security becomes a prison of its own. Robert's voice carried no judgment, only quiet observation. Olivia told me that growing up, she felt like every choice came with a scorecard. Every decision was evaluated based on risk and practical outcomes, never on joy or passion. That's not fair, I protested. I supported her music. Because it was something she excelled at that could lead to a stable career. Would you have been as supportive if she'd wanted to become a painter, a writer, a jazz musician playing smoky clubs with no guaranteed paycheck? I opened my mouth to object, then closed it. Would I have? Or would I have redirected her toward something more practical? Robert continued. Olivia feels that your support always came with conditions, spoken or unspoken. That your love itself was somehow tied to her making the right choices. That's absurd, I whispered, but a knot formed in my throat. I never stopped loving her. She knows that intellectually, but emotions aren't always logical. He took another sip of coffee. When she told me about finding hawthorn for our wedding, she was ecstatic. It was the perfect blend of elegance and artistry, traditional yet unique. Then yesterday, she came home in tears, saying we needed to find a new venue. the image of my daughter crying over this twisted something deep inside me. I told her she doesn't need to change venues. Jessica can handle everything. She'll never have to interact with me. Robert's eyebrows rose. And you think that's what she wants? To pretend her mother doesn't exist on her wedding day? Isn't it? She's made it quite clear that she doesn't want me in her life. No, Eleanor. What she doesn't want is to feel judged or managed. There's a difference. He leaned forward. Let me ask you something. Why did you take this job? Managing a wedding venue doesn't seem like a natural transition from school accounting. The question caught me off guard. I needed work after the school district downsized. Mr. Reynolds took a chance on me. There must have been other accounting positions available. Why Hawthorne? I considered the question, searching for the honest answer beneath the practical one I usually gave. Because it was beautiful, I said finally. Because every corner of this place tells a story. Because helping create perfect moments for others filled something empty in me. Robert smiled, a gentle acknowledgement. Olivia plays with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. She could have pursued a solo career. She's certainly talented enough. Do you know why she chose an orchestra instead? I shook my head. She told me it's because there's something magical about being part of something larger than yourself. About individual voices coming together to create something none of them could create alone. His eyes held mine. She plays for the same reason you took this job. For beauty, for meaning, for connection. Something shifted in my understanding then, like a key turning in a lock I hadn't known existed. I don't know how to fix this, I admitted. Even if I could, Olivia doesn't want me at the wedding. She made that clear months ago before she even knew I was connected to Hawthorne. Robert's expression turned thoughtful. She told you that directly? Not in those exact words, I conceded. But when I called after seeing the engagement announcement in the symphony newsletter, she said she thought it would be better if I wasn't there, that the day should be stress-free. Ah. Robert nodded slowly. Did it occur to you that might have been fear speaking, not rejection? That perhaps she was afraid of wanting you there and being disappointed? It hadn't. Not once. Olivia struggles with vulnerability, he continued. She builds walls to protect herself from hurt. But behind those walls is a woman who keeps every birthday card you've sent in a box under our bed, who sometimes plays her violin at night when she thinks I'm asleep, and the melodies are always the same ones she learned as a child, the ones you used to hum while making dinner. My vision blurred with unexpected tears. What are you saying? I'm saying that planning a wedding at the venue you manage isn't a coincidence, Eleanor. Consciously or unconsciously, Olivia has been trying to find her way back to you for years. She's just been too afraid to walk the final steps. The weight of his words settled over me. Could it be true? Had I misread my daughter's distance all this time? What do you suggest I do? Don't retreat, he said simply. Don't hand her off to Jessica and disappear into the background. Be present, but without expectations. Show her who you are now, not who you were then. And if she rejects me again? Robert's eyes crinkled with gentle understanding. Then at least you'll both know you tried. But Eleanor, he added, reaching across the table to briefly touch my hand, I don't think she will. As Robert finished his coffee, we discussed practical next steps. He suggested I draft a proposal for their wedding, not as Olivia's mother, but as the venue manager I'd become. Show her my vision, my understanding of what would make the day special. Let her see my work, my passion, without the weight of our history. One last thing, Robert said as we prepared to leave. What exactly is your role at Hawthorne? Olivia mentioned you were the property manager, but from what Melissa says, you seem to be much more. I smiled slightly. Officially, I'm the estate director. I oversee everything from bookings to landscaping to historical preservation. But Mr. Reynolds, the owner, is in his 80s now and spends most of his time in Florida. For the past 3 years, I've essentially run Hawthorne on his behalf. Robert's eyes widened slightly. So you're not just the manager, you're practically the owner. In function, if not in name, I acknowledged. Why? Because, Robert said, with a smile, I think that information might matter to Olivia more than you realize. I spent the night after meeting Robert at my desk in Hawthorne's East Wing, surrounded by floor plans, vendor portfolios, and seasonal flower catalogs. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, then 1, then 2. I barely noticed. Creating. Wedding proposals was something I did regularly, a practiced blend of artistic vision and logistical precision. But this wasn't just any proposal. This was for Olivia, my daughter who spoke through music, who felt things deeply but guarded those feelings fiercely, who had inherited my stubborn practicality but softened it with her father's artistic soul. Most clients received standard packages with slight customizations. For Olivia, I started from scratch. I knew from her booking information that she had requested the grand ballroom for the reception, with its soaring 30-foot ceilings and wall of French doors opening to the terrace. The garden ceremony was standard for June weddings, typically held beneath the wisteria-covered pergola where generations of couples had exchanged vows. But what if I sketched a different layout on fresh paper? Instead of the pergola, I envisioned the ceremony in the hidden grove, a small clearing surrounded by century-old maple trees behind the rose garden. Few couples chose it because it was more secluded, further from the main house. But its natural acoustics were extraordinary. Sound resonated through the space like a woodland cathedral. For a musician like Olivia, who understood how environment shaped sound, it would be perfect. I imagined her quartet friends playing as guests arrived, the notes drifting through the trees. The space would need simple decorations, perhaps hanging lanterns in the branches, wildflowers instead of formal arrangements. For the reception, instead of the standard ballroom configuration, I sketched a layout that incorporated both the indoor space and the terrace, with French doors thrown open to create a seamless flow between inside and out. The orchestra could be positioned at the junction, playing to both spaces. Around 3 a.m., I moved from layouts to materials. Most Hawthorne weddings featured crisp whites, soft blushes, elegant neutrals, but I remembered that Olivia had always been drawn to deeper colors, saturated blues, forest greens, rich aubergines. Her childhood bedroom had been painted a bold teal despite my suggestion of something more versatile. I pulled fabric swatches in jewel tones, photographs of tablescapes featuring vintage-colored glass, examples of dramatic floral arrangements, with unexpected elements like blackberries and dark foliage mixed with traditional blooms. By dawn, I had assembled something unlike any proposal I'd created before, less a formal plan than a conversation on paper. Each page included traditional options side by side with unexpected alternatives. Notes in the margins posed questions rather than dictated answers. Consider how candlelight might transform this space after sunset. Imagine the sound of string instruments here versus here. It wasn't just a wedding plan. It was an invitation to collaborate, to dream together. Jessica found me asleep at my desk when she arrived at 8, my cheek pressed against the final page of notes. Eleanor? She gently shook my shoulder. Are you all right? I blinked awake, momentarily disoriented. What time is it? Just after 8. Have you been here all night? I stretched, wincing at the stiffness in my neck. I was working on something important. I gathered the scattered papers into a portfolio folder. Would you mind handling the Walker consultation this morning? I need to run home and freshen up. Jessica's eyes widened slightly at the request. I rarely delegated client meetings, but she nodded. Of course. Their appointment's at 10. Anything else? Yes. Could you contact Ms. Winters about the Mitchell-Clark wedding? Ask if she and Olivia might be available for an additional consultation tomorrow. I thought you were transferring that client to me, Jessica said, confusion evident in her voice. I hesitated. Let's call it a collaborative approach for now. An hour later, showered and changed, I returned to Hawthorne with renewed determination. I added final touches to the proposal, had it professionally bound, and wrapped it in simple navy paper tied with copper-colored ribbon, a nod to the jewel-toned palette I'd suggested. Melissa called mid-afternoon to confirm a meeting for the following day at 2. Just Olivia, she added. Robert has a faculty meeting he can't reschedule. My heart pounded at the news. Part of me had been counting on Robert's moderating presence. That's fine, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. That evening, alone in my cottage, I pulled out Olivia's childhood violin, preserved in its case all these years. The horsehair on the bow had degraded and the strings needed replacing, but the maple wood still gleamed with a warm honey glow in the lamplight. I remembered the day we'd bought it, her first full-sized instrument. She was 11, having outgrown the fractional violins she'd started with. The violin teacher had accompanied us to a specialty shop in Boston, where dozens of instruments lined the walls. Try as many as you like, the owner had told her. The right violin chooses the musician as much as the musician chooses the violin. Olivia had tested 7 different instruments before picking up this one, a modest student model compared to some of the others. But the moment she drew the bow across its strings, her face had transformed. This one, she'd said immediately. It sings. The shop owner had quoted a price well above what I'd budgeted. I'd hesitated, casting a glance at her teacher. He'd nodded almost imperceptibly. This was indeed the right instrument. We'll take it, I'd said without further deliberation, writing a check that would mean brown bag lunches and no new clothes for me that season. Olivia had looked up in surprise. She'd heard my earlier budget discussions with the shop owner and clearly expected negotiation or compromise. Instead, I'd simply handed her the case and said, "Take good care of it." It was one of the few times I'd chosen passion over practicality without hesitation. One of the few times I'd seen pure, uncomplicated joy on my daughter's face. Why had there been so few such moments? The next day, I arrived at Hawthorne's main office 15 minutes before Olivia's scheduled appointment. Jessica had arranged coffee service and prepared the private consultation room with fresh flowers. The proposal sat centered on the polished mahogany table. "Do you want me to stay?" Jessica asked, sensing my nervousness. I shook my head. "No, but thank you. This is something I need to do alone." At precisely 2 o'clock, I heard the distinctive sound of the heavy front door opening, followed by voices in the foyer. I smoothed my blouse, took a deep breath, and opened the office door. Olivia stood alone in the entrance hall, dressed in dark jeans and an oversized cream sweater, her chestnut hair pulled back in a simple knot at the nape of her neck. She looked younger somehow, more vulnerable without Robert beside her. "Hello," I said softly. She nodded in acknowledgement. Melissa couldn't make it either. Last-minute emergency with another client. So it would be just the 2 of us after all. "Would you like to come in? I've prepared something I'd like to show you." She followed me into the consultation room, maintaining a careful distance. We sat across from each other at the table, the bound proposal between us. "Before we start," I said, "I want you to know that I understand if you're still uncomfortable having your wedding here. If after today you'd prefer to work exclusively with Jessica, or even find another venue entirely, I'll respect that decision." Olivia studied me for a moment, her expression guarded. "Robert told me about your meeting." "He did?" I hadn't expected that. "He doesn't keep secrets from me." There was a hint of defiance in her tone, perhaps a subtle accusation about secrets. "Kept in our family." "That's good," I said sincerely. "Trust is important." An awkward silence fell between us. I pushed the wrapped proposal toward her. This isn't a standard package. It's just some ideas. A starting point for discussion. She untied the ribbons slowly, methodically, the way she used to unwrap birthday presents as a child, always careful not to tear the paper. Inside, she found the bound portfolio labeled simply, Olivia and Robert, a Hawthorne wedding. As she turned the pages, her expression shifted subtly. A slight widening of the eyes at the Grove ceremony suggestion. A thoughtful tilt of the head at the reception layout. A trace of surprise at the color palette options. "This isn't what I expected," she said finally. "What did you expect?" "Something more conventional. Safe." She looked up from the portfolio. "You've always preferred the conventional approach." "Perhaps I've changed," I ventured. "Have you?" The question hung between us, weighted with a decade of history. "People can, you know." I gestured to the proposal. "What do you think of the Grove for the ceremony? The acoustics would be perfect for the string quartet." She looked back at the sketches. "It's not what we discussed with Melissa. She recommended the pergola." "The pergola is beautiful, classic," I acknowledged. "But you've never been conventional, Olivia. Even as a child, you chose your own path." Her eyes met mine, searching. "Unlike you." "Unlike the person I was," I corrected gently. "Managing Hawthorne has taught me something about beauty for its own sake. About creating moments that resonate beyond practical considerations." She turned another page, studying the reception layout. "The terrace extension is interesting, but more complicated logistically." "True, but worth the effort, I think." I leaned forward slightly. Like most things of value, Olivia's fingers traced the fabric swatches, jewel tones instead of pastels. "These aren't the colors we discussed. Just an alternative to consider. Something that reminded me of you." Her head snapped up. "Of me? Your bedroom was teal. Your favorite dress in high school was that deep purple one with the embroidery. You always gravitated toward rich colors." I smiled slightly. "You once told me pastels were colors that couldn't commit." A flicker of surprise crossed her face. "I didn't think you remembered things like that." "I remember everything about you, Olivia." The words escaped before I could filter them, raw and honest. "Even the things you think I missed." She looked away, focusing intently on the proposal pages. "These are beautiful ideas, very thoughtful." Her voice was professional, measured, the tone she might use with any vendor. I recognized the deflection for what it was, a retreat to safer ground. All her life, Olivia had pulled back when emotional waters grew too deep. I'd always let her, respecting the boundaries she established, giving her the space she seemed to need. But Robert's words echoed in my mind. "Don't retreat. Be present, but without expectations." "There's something I'd like to show you," I said, standing. "If you have time." Olivia glanced at her watch. "I have another appointment at 4. This won't take long." She followed me out of the consultation room, through the main hall, and up the grand staircase to the second floor. We walked in silence down the long corridor lined with portraits of the Reynolds family through generations, past the small ballroom used for more intimate events, to a door at the end of the east wing. I unlocked it with the skeleton key I always carried and pushed it open to reveal a circular room with windows on 3 sides. Unlike the formal opulence of the main house, this space was simpler, more intimate. Comfortable seating clustered around a central fireplace. Bookshelves lined the walls between windows. A baby grand piano stood in one corner. "This is my office," I explained. "Or at least my unofficial one. Mr. Reynolds calls it the morning room because of how the sunlight fills it at dawn." Olivia stepped inside, curiosity momentarily overriding her guardedness. "It's beautiful. It's not generally part of the wedding. Facilities. Most guests never see it." I moved to a cabinet near the piano and unlocked it. but I thought it might be perfect for something specific. I withdrew a folder of photographs and handed it to her. These are from the Eastern Grove, taken at different times of day throughout the year. Olivia opened the folder and began looking through the images. Morning mist hanging between the trees, dappled afternoon sunlight, the golden glow of sunset, filtering through leaves. The final photo showed the grove at night, lanterns hanging from branches casting a warm, ethereal light over a small gathering. That was Mr. Reynolds' 80th birthday celebration, I explained. His grandchildren arranged a private concert. A string quartet, actually. It's magical, she admitted quietly, still studying the photograph. The thing about Hawthorne that most people don't understand is that it's not just a beautiful backdrop for important moments. It's a place that enhances experiences. I moved toward the windows overlooking the gardens. The Eastern Grove doesn't just look special, it sounds special. It transforms music. Olivia joined me at the window. Why are you showing me this? I turned to face her. Because I want you to have everything you deserve on your wedding day. Not what's traditional or expected, but what will actually mean something to you. I paused. And because I thought you might like to see where I spend my time now. She glanced around the room again, taking in the personal touches, a vase of fresh wildflowers on the desk, a hand-knit throw draped over the armchair, a collection of art books stacked on a side table. It suits you, she said, surprising me. It's organized, but warmer than I would have expected. People change, Olivia. I moved to the piano, running my fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. When I first came to Hawthorne, I approached it like any other job. Systems, schedules, budgets. But Mr. Reynolds saw something else in me. What was that? An appreciation for beauty, for memories, for marking moments that matter. I smiled faintly. He said I had an eye for details that tell a story. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then, Robert says you basically run this place now. Mr. Reynolds still owns Hawthorne, but yes, I manage all aspects of the estate. He trusts my judgment. That's impressive. She seemed to struggle with the acknowledgement. I didn't know. How could you? We haven't really talked in years. I kept my tone gentle, free of accusation. She wandered to the bookshelves, scanning the titles. You have books on music theory. I thought I should understand the language that shaped your life. I joined her by the shelves. I'll never appreciate music the way you do, but I wanted to try. Her fingers stilled on the spine of a book about classical composers. Why? Because it matters to you. The simplicity of the truth hung between us. She turned to face me fully for the first time. I don't understand what's happening here, Mom. For years you were a certain way, predictable, practical to a fault. Now suddenly you're this different person who creates magical wedding proposals and studies music theory and works in a room that looks like something out of a novel. Not suddenly, I corrected. Gradually. Over 5 years that you weren't here to see. The words weren't meant to wound, but I saw her flinch slightly. I'm sorry, I added quickly. That wasn't fair. No. It was. She moved away from the bookshelves, crossing to the other side of the room. I made a choice to keep my distance. I own that. We both made choices, Olivia. Neither of us reached out in ways that might have mattered. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Through the windows, late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gardens below. In the distance, ground staff were setting up for an evening event, moving chairs and arranging flowers on the west lawn. I should go, Olivia said, checking her watch again. My appointment. I nodded, disappointed but not surprised. Of course, I'll walk you out. As we descended the grand staircase, Olivia stopped suddenly, halfway down. The proposal you made? Is it possible? The Grove? The colors? All of it? Yes. It would require some adjustments to the standard packages, but everything I suggested is doable. She nodded thoughtfully. Could you send the complete proposal to Melissa? I'd like to discuss it with Robert. Certainly. We continued down the stairs in silence. At the main entrance, I opened the heavy door for her. She stepped onto the portico, then paused and turned back. The room upstairs. The morning room. It reminded me of something. I raised an eyebrow in question. That apartment we looked at when I was applying to colleges. The one in Rochester near Eastman. It had that circular sitting area with windows on 3 sides. You said it was impractical. Too many windows would make heating expensive, and the unusual shape would make furniture arrangement difficult. I remembered the apartment vaguely. A charming but overpriced unit in an old Victorian conversion. That sounds like something I would have said. I loved that apartment, she said quietly. I could imagine practicing there, watching the seasons change through those windows. But we took the sensible 1-bedroom in the newer building instead. The memory struck me like a physical blow, another instance where I'd chosen practicality over joy, security over passion. How many such moments had accumulated over the years, building the wall between us? I'm sorry, I said, meaning it deeply. I wish I'd listened more and advised less. Olivia studied me for a long moment. I don't need you to be sorry, Mom. I just need you to see me. Not who you think I should be or who you're afraid I might become. Just me. I'd like that chance, I said softly, if you'll give it to me. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, I'll call you after I speak with Robert and Melissa, and walked to her car. I watched her drive away, uncertain whether our conversation had bridged any of the distance between us or merely illuminated how vast that distance remained. The next morning, Jessica cornered me in the main office, her expression unusually serious. Eleanor, we may have a situation with the Mitchell-Clark wedding. My heart sank. What kind of situation? Mr. Reynolds called from Florida. He says Ms. Mitchell requested a direct conversation with him about the venue arrangements. He seemed surprised, said he's never had a bride bypass the estate director before. Did he speak with her? Briefly, by phone. He's promised her a video. Call tomorrow morning. Jessica hesitated. Eleanor, he asked me specifically if there was any connection between you and Ms. Mitchell. I didn't know what to say. I sighed. It's all right, Jessica. Mr. Reynolds should know. Olivia is my daughter. Her eyes widened. Oh, I suspected something when I saw your reaction to her file, but I didn't want to pry. It's complicated. We've been estranged for some time. I forced a smile. But it's fine. I'll call Mr. Reynolds and explain. Alone in my office, I dialed the familiar number, rehearsing explanations in my head. William Reynolds answered on the 3rd ring, his voice warm despite the crackling connection. Eleanor, I was just about to call you. Jessica mentioned Olivia Mitchell contacted you. I should have told you sooner that she's my daughter. Ah. He paused. That explains her unusual request. I'm sorry if it's created any awkwardness. We haven't been close in recent years, but I've been trying to— Eleanor, he interrupted gently. She's not calling to complain about you. I stopped short. She's not? No. Quite the opposite, actually. She asked if it would be possible to use the morning room for a private family gathering before the ceremony. She said you'd shown it to her and she thought it would be perfect for something special she's planning. I sat down heavily in my chair. She wants to use the morning room? Yes. She was quite insistent that it needed to be that specific space. There was a smile in his voice now. She also had some rather detailed questions about your role at Hawthorne. My role? She seemed particularly interested in learning exactly how much authority you have over the estate operations. A strange Feeling washed over me, not quite hope, but its cautious cousin. And what did you tell her? The truth, my dear. That Hawthorne has been in my family for generations, but you are its heart now. That nothing significant happens there without your approval. He chuckled. I may have mentioned that the board and I have been discussing transitioning ownership gradually to you over the next few years, as we've talked about. My hand tightened around the phone. William, we've only had preliminary conversations about that possibility. Well, perhaps it's time for more formal discussions, wouldn't you? Say, especially with family events on the horizon. After hanging up, I sat motionless at my desk, trying to process what had just happened. Olivia had reached out to Mr. Reynolds, not to circumvent me, but to learn more about my position. She wanted to use the morning room, my personal sanctuary, at Hawthorne for something special before her wedding. What did it all mean? My phone chimed with a text message. It was from Olivia. Robert and I reviewed your proposal. We love it, especially the grove ceremony. Could we meet tomorrow to discuss details? Just you this time, not Jessica. I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the message. Then I typed my reply. I'd love that. The morning room, 10 a.m.? Her response came almost immediately. Perfect. There's something important I need to ask you. I barely slept that night. Olivia's text message played on repeat in my mind. There's something important I need to ask you. What question could be so significant that she needed to ask it in person? Was it about the wedding? About Hawthorne? About us? By morning, I'd cycled through dozens of possibilities, each triggering its own emotional cascade. I arrived at Hawthorne an hour earlier than usual, needing the familiar routine of opening the house to steady my nerves. I walked through the grand halls, drawing back heavy velvet curtains to let sunlight stream through leaded glass windows. I checked fresh flower arrangements in the entrance hall and library, straightened chairs in the dining room, and ensured the fireplaces were laid with fresh logs for the evening's small corporate event. These daily rituals had become a form of meditation over the years. The quiet intimacy of caring for this grand old house never failed to center me. Today, though, my mind kept wandering, my hands restless. I'd instructed the kitchen staff to prepare coffee service for the morning room, French. Press, not the usual carafe, along with the maple scones Olivia had loved as a teenager. A small indulgence, perhaps, but I wanted this meeting to feel different from our previous professional consultation. At 9:45, I settled into the morning room, rearranging the seating slightly so two armchairs faced each other near the windows. The day was clear, sunlight casting patterns across the oriental rug through the rippled antique glass. Outside, gardeners were pruning the early summer roses, their movements unhurried and deliberate. The grandfather clock in the hallway had just struck 10 when I heard footsteps approaching. A soft knock, and then Olivia appeared in the doorway, silhouetted briefly against the hallway light. Good morning, I said, rising. Morning. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Today she wore a simple blue dress with a lightweight cardigan, her hair loose around her shoulders, more relaxed than I'd seen her since our unexpected reunion. Coffee? I gestured to the service on the side table. Please. I poured 2 cups, adding a splash of cream to hers without asking, a small test of memory. She accepted the cup with a flicker of surprise in her eyes, noticing but not commenting on the fact that I remembered how she took her coffee. Maple scones, she observed, taking one from the plate I offered. I haven't had these in years. Miller's Bakery still makes them the same way. The owner's granddaughter runs it now, but she kept all the original recipes. Olivia took a bite, closing her eyes briefly. Just how I remember. We settled into the armchairs by the window. For a moment, we simply sipped our coffee in silence, the weight of anticipation hanging between us. I spoke with Mr. Reynolds yesterday, I said finally, deciding to address it directly. He mentioned you'd called him. She nodded. I wanted to understand something. About Hawthorne? About you. She set her coffee cup on the side table. All these years, I've had this image of you in my head. The cautious accountant, the practical mother who never took risks, the woman who counted pennies and prioritized security above all else. Remained silent, letting her continue. Then I walk into Hawthorne Estate and find you've completely reinvented yourself. You're running this magnificent historic property, making creative decisions, building something beautiful. She gestured around the room. I couldn't reconcile these two versions of my mother. People can surprise you, I said softly, if you let them. She studied me, her expression thoughtful. Mr. Reynolds told me you're being groomed to take over Hawthorne eventually, that the board is considering transferring ownership to you in stages. We've had preliminary discussions about that possibility, I acknowledged. Nothing's finalized. But you'd want that? To own Hawthorne? Yes. The certainty in my voice surprised even me. I love this place, not just the beauty of it, but what it represents. Hundreds of years of stories, celebrations, beginnings. There's something powerful about being the caretaker of all that history while helping create new memories. Olivia looked out the windows toward the gardens. It's strange. I keep thinking about all those times you warned me about unstable career paths, about the importance of security, and now you're considering taking on a historic estate with all its complications and uncertainties. The irony isn't lost on me, I admitted with a small smile. But maybe I needed to learn those lessons myself, to recognize that some risks are worth taking. She turned back to me. Is that why you didn't fight harder when Dad left? Because it felt too risky to keep trying? The question caught me off guard. In all our years of strained communication, we'd never directly discussed the divorce. No, I said after a moment. I didn't fight because I knew it wasn't working. We'd become different people, your father and I. Or maybe we'd always been different and just stopped pretending. You never told me that. You were 17, heading off to college. I didn't want to burden you with the messy details of our marriage. So instead, you just let me believe whatever I wanted to believe. There was no accusation in her tone, just a quiet observation. What did you believe, Olivia? She paused, gathering her thoughts. That you were too rigid to accommodate Dad's dreams. That you chose practical concerns over passion. That you couldn't bend, so eventually something broke. The assessment stung, not because it was cruel, but because it contained kernels of truth. That's not entirely wrong, I conceded. I was rigid in many ways. I was so focused on avoiding financial insecurity that I missed other forms of poverty. Emotional, creative, spiritual. But your father made choices too. He pursued dreams without foundations. He took risks without safety nets. He made promises he couldn't keep. Like using my college fund. I nodded. That was the breaking point for me. Not the money itself, but the breach of trust. I took a deep breath. The truth is, we both failed each other in different ways. And in the process, I think we failed you too. Her eyes glistened slightly, but she blinked the moisture away. Thank you for saying that. We let the moment breathe, the weight of unspoken history beginning to lighten between us. You mentioned there was something important you wanted to ask me, I prompted gently. Yes. She straightened in her chair. Robert and I discussed your proposal for the wedding. We love the ideas, especially the grove for the ceremony. But there's something missing that I wanted to talk to you about. What's that? She reached into her bag and withdrew an envelope, handing it to me. This. Inside was a formal invitation card, elegantly letterpress printed on heavy stock. I read the flowing script. Mr. and Mrs. Robert Clark request the honor of your presence at the marriage. Of their daughter Olivia Lynn Mitchell to Robert James Clark, I looked up, confused. This lists Robert's parents as hosting. It's the traditional wording, she explained. When we sent out invitations 3 months ago, it seemed simpler. But it's not right. I don't understand. Olivia leaned forward. Mom, I don't want you to just be the venue manager for my wedding. I want you to be the mother of the bride. Officially, in every way. My breath caught. You mean, I want you to walk me down the aisle, she said, her voice suddenly vulnerable. I want you to be recognized in the program, in the introductions, in all of it. I want you to help me get ready that morning. I want... Her voice broke slightly. I want my mom at my wedding. Tears sprang to my eyes before I could stop them. Oh, Olivia. I know it's complicated, she continued quickly. Dad's still walking me down the aisle, too. We'll both escort me. And there's so much history between us that we haven't fully addressed. But seeing you here, understanding what you've built, hearing about your journey, it's made me realize something. What's that? That maybe we're more alike than I ever wanted to admit. A small smile touched her lips. Stubborn, independent, determined to prove ourselves. I reached out hesitantly, covering her hand with mine. When she didn't pull away, I said, I would be honored, Olivia, more than you can possibly know. She turned her hand to grasp mine. There's something else. The morning room. I'd like to use it for something specific before the ceremony. Of course, whatever you'd like. I want to play. For you, she said. A private performance just for my mother, the piece I've been composing for the past year. She paused. It's called Reconciliation. The word hung in the air between us, fragile and hopeful. Not forgiveness exactly. We'd both made mistakes. That couldn't simply be erased, but something perhaps more valuable. A new beginning built on the foundation of our shared past. I'd like that very much, I managed through the tightness in my throat. Olivia nodded, squeezing my hand once before releasing it. Good. That's settled then. We spent the next hour discussing wedding details, now not as client and venue manager, but as daughter and mother. She showed me sketches of her dress, described the menu selections, explained how she and Robert had incorporated musical elements throughout the ceremony and reception. As we talked, something shifted between us. Not a dramatic transformation, but a gentle thawing. The wariness in her eyes receded. My careful guardedness eased. We found moments of laughter, shared enthusiasm over small details, finished each other's sentences once or twice. When Olivia finally checked her watch and said she needed to leave, for another appointment, I walked her to the main entrance. At the door, she hesitated, then turned and hugged me briefly. The first physical contact we'd shared in years. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me who you are now. Thank you for seeing me, I replied, echoing her words from our previous conversation. She pulled back, her expression serious. We still have things to work through, Mom. This doesn't erase everything. I know. I nodded. But it's a place to start. As I watched her car disappear down the long driveway, something inside me settled. Not the giddy joy of a perfect resolution, but the quiet satisfaction of a door long closed beginning, finally, to open. That evening, I called William Reynolds to thank him for speaking with Olivia. I only told her the truth, he said, that Hawthorne is fortunate to have you, and so am I. You may have helped save my relationship with my daughter, I told him. I can never repay that. Nonsense. His voice crackled through the phone. You've saved Hawthorne for future generations. Helping reunite you with your daughter is the least I could do. After we hung up, I sat on my cottage porch watching fireflies rise from the darkening lawn, their tiny lights blinking on and off like distant signals. In a few short weeks, Olivia would be married in the Eastern Grove, surrounded by the natural beauty of Hawthorne. and I would be there, not just as the woman who managed the estate, but as her mother. The invitation she'd shown me had been the old version. Tomorrow, she informed me, new ones would be printed with an amended hosting line. Ms. Eleanor Barnes and Mr. Frank Mitchell request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Olivia Lynn Mitchell, to Robert James Clark. My name would be first, a small detail, but one that carried meaning we both understood. After years of standing in the background of her life, I was being invited to step forward, to be seen. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I finally was. The weeks leading up to Olivia's wedding transformed Hawthorne in ways I hadn't anticipated. Suddenly, the estate wasn't just my workplace, but the backdrop for my own family's milestone. I found myself seeing the familiar grounds through new eyes, not as the estate director assessing logistics and aesthetics, but as a mother imagining her daughter's most significant day. Every decision took on heightened importance. The exact placement of chairs in the eastern grove, the timing of the lighting as the afternoon would fade into evening, the acoustics for Olivia's musician friends, who would be performing throughout the ceremony. Jessica noticed the change in my approach immediately. "I've never seen you triple-check a floral delivery before," she remarked one afternoon as I inspected each arrangement destined for the wedding rehearsal dinner. "These aren't just any flowers," I replied, adjusting a stem in the centerpiece. "They're for Olivia." Jessica smiled knowingly. In the weeks since learning about my relationship with the bride, she'd become my unexpected confidant. "It's wonderful to see you two reconnecting," she said. "Though I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about meeting your ex-husband tomorrow." The rehearsal dinner, where Frank and I would be in the same room for the first time in nearly a decade. The thought had kept me awake more nights than I cared to admit. "Don't worry about Frank," I assured her, though my own stomach knotted at the prospect. "He's personable. Always has been." That evening, alone in my cottage, I stood before the mirror longer than usual, scrutinizing my reflection. The years had left their mark. Fine lines around my eyes, strands of silver threading through my chestnut hair. I'd considered coloring it for the wedding, but ultimately decided against it. This was who I was now, a woman who had earned every one of those silver strands. I was applying lipstick when my phone chimed with a text message from an unfamiliar number. "Eleanor, it's Frank. Olivia gave me your number. Just arrived in town. Wondering if we might meet for coffee tomorrow before the rehearsal? There are some things we should probably discuss privately before the family festivities begin." My stomach lurched. I'd expected to see Frank at the rehearsal, surrounded by family and friends, a buffer of social niceties to ease the awkwardness of our reunion. A private meeting hadn't been part of my mental preparation. I stared at the message, considering my options. Refusal would only delay the inevitable and might create tension that would affect Olivia. Acceptance meant facing the complicated emotions I'd carefully compartmentalized for years. "Coffee would be fine," I typed finally. "Miller's Bakery on Main Street, 10 a.m.? His reply came immediately. "Perfect. See you then." Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed restlessly, memories of my marriage playing like scattered film clips behind my closed eyelids. Frank teaching Olivia to ride a bicycle, his hands steady on the seat as she wobbled down the driveway. Frank bringing home takeout after a failed business meeting, his optimism somehow intact despite another setback. Frank and I dancing in the kitchen to the radio before disappointments and diverging paths pulled us in opposite directions. The next morning dawned clear and warm, a perfect June day. I dressed carefully in a navy linen dress, professional enough for the work I would need to attend to later, but appropriate for meeting my ex-husband for the first time in years. Miller's Bakery was bustling with its usual morning crowd. I arrived 15 minutes early, claiming a small table by the window, and ordered a black coffee to steady my nerves. At exactly 10 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. I looked up to see Frank standing in the entrance, scanning the room. He spotted me immediately, a smile spreading across his face. That same easy, charming smile that had once been as familiar to me as my own reflection. He looked older, of course. His dark hair had receded slightly and was now more salt than pepper. The laugh lines around his eyes had deepened. But he moved with the same confident stride as he crossed the room to my table. "Eleanor," he said warmly, as if we'd seen each other only last week. "You look wonderful." "Thank you, Frank. So do you." The pleasantry came automatically, though it wasn't untrue. He had aged well. He ordered coffee and a maple scone, still his favorite after all these years, and settled across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the weight of our shared history hovering in the space between us. "So," he said finally, "Hawthorne Estate. Olivia tells me you're practically running the place now." "I am," I acknowledged, grateful for the neutral topic. "It's been rewarding work." "I'm not surprised. You always had an eye for details others missed." He took a sip of his coffee. "I was shocked when Olivia told me you were behind her wedding. Venue. Of all the places in New England she could have chosen." "Pure coincidence," I assured him. "I had no idea she was the bride until I saw her name in the booking calendar." Life has a strange way of circling back, doesn't it? His expression turned thoughtful. "Olivia also mentioned you two have been reconnecting." I nodded. "We're trying. It's been complicated, but we're finding our way." "I'm glad." His sincerity seemed genuine. "She needs you, Eleanor. Always has, even when she was pushing you away." "She seems to have done quite well for herself," I pointed out. "The Chicago Symphony, a beautiful home, a good man." "Yes, and she's worked incredibly hard for all of it. But success isn't the same as happiness." Frank leaned forward slightly. "Did you know she almost quit music entirely during her second year at Juilliard?" The revelation shocked me. "What? No, she never said anything." "She called me one night, completely distraught. Said she couldn't handle the pressure, that maybe she'd made a mistake choosing music as a career. That perhaps you had been right all along about the practical realities." "What did you tell her?" I asked quietly. I reminded her that passion without discipline is just a hobby, but discipline without passion is just a job. He smiled faintly, and then I told her that her mother's practicality wasn't wrong. It was just one side of the equation, that she had inherited both our strengths, whether she realized it or not. I stared at him, processing this new information. All these years, I'd assumed Frank had encouraged Olivia to keep her distance from me, feeding her narrative of me as the cold, practical parent who didn't understand her artistic soul. "I never knew," I said finally. "There's a lot we never told each other, Eleanor. That was part of our problem, wasn't it?" The question hung between us, piercing in its simplicity. Before I could respond, Frank continued. "Olivia tells me we're both walking her down the aisle." "Yes," I confirmed. "If that's all right with you." "More than all right. It's perfect, actually." He hesitated. "Which brings me to what I wanted to discuss, the toast at the reception." "Oh." In the whirlwind of reconnecting with Olivia, I hadn't given much thought to the traditional parental speeches. "I was thinking we might consider doing it together," Frank suggested. "A joint toast from both parents, showing Olivia that despite everything, we can stand united for her." The proposal surprised me. "You've thought about this." "I have." "Andrea?" Helped me see how meaningful it could be. At my questioning look, he clarified. "My wife. She's very insightful about family dynamics." Of course. The yoga instructor he'd married 5 years after our divorce. The woman who sent Christmas cards with family updates I pretended not to care about. "Will Andrea be at the wedding?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yes, though she's offered to make herself scarce during family photos if that would be more comfortable." The consideration touched me unexpectedly. "That's thoughtful, but unnecessary." She's part of your life, part of Olivia's family now. She should be included. Frank's expression softened. You always did rise to the occasion, Eleanor, even when it wasn't easy. I'm just trying to do what's best for Olivia. I know, me too. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket. I've jotted down some ideas for the toast if you'd like to see them. We spent the next half hour crafting the outline of our joint speech, finding moments of surprising harmony as we reminisced about Olivia's childhood. Frank remembered stories I'd forgotten. I recalled details that had slipped from his memory. Together, we pieced together a more complete picture of our daughter's journey than either of us could have created alone. As we prepared to leave, Frank hesitated. There's one more thing I wanted to say, Eleanor. His voice had lost its easy confidence, taking on a vulnerability I rarely heard from him. I'm sorry for how things ended between us. Not the divorce itself, we needed to go our separate ways, but the bitterness, the way I handled the college fund situation, how I let my disappointment spill over and affect Olivia's relationship with you. The apology, unexpected and long, overdue, caught me off guard. Thank you for saying that, I managed. Better late than never, right? His smile held a touch of regret. See you at the rehearsal dinner? I nodded. I'll be there. As I watched him walk away, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps its quiet precursor. A loosening of old resentments that had calcified over time. That afternoon, as I supervised the final arrangements for the rehearsal dinner in Hawthorne's West Garden, Olivia arrived early to check the setup. She found me adjusting candles on the long farm tables arranged beneath strands of bistro lights. Everything looks beautiful, she said, coming to stand beside me. Perfect, actually. Not quite perfect yet, I replied, moving a small vase a quarter-inch to the left. But it will be, she smiled. Dad mentioned you two had coffee this morning. We did. I glanced at her, gauging her reaction. It was surprisingly nice. He said the same thing. She picked up a place card, running her finger over the calligraphy. It means a lot to me, Mom, seeing you both make this effort. We both love you, Olivia. That hasn't changed, even when everything else did. She set the card down carefully. I know that now. I think I always knew it, somewhere underneath all the confusion and hurt. The afternoon sun filtered through the garden's towering oak trees, casting dappled light across the tables. In just a few hours, this space would be filled with the people who loved Olivia most in the world, gathered together to celebrate the beginning of her new life with Robert. And somehow, against all odds, I would be there not just as the venue director ensuring everything ran smoothly, but as the mother of the bride, taking my rightful place in my daughter's story. Dad mentioned you're doing a joint toast, Olivia said, breaking into my thoughts. We are. I hope that's all right with you. It's more than all right. She turned to face me fully. It's what I've always wanted, even when I didn't know how to ask. For it. Both of you, together, even if it's just for one night. I reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, a maternal gesture I hadn't attempted in years. To my surprise, she didn't pull away. Consider it our wedding gift to you, I said softly. The one thing money can't buy. As the first evening guests began to arrive, I excused myself to handle a last-minute delivery issue. Walking back toward the main house, I glanced over my shoulder to see Olivia still standing in the garden, surrounded by the beauty of Hawthorne, looking more at home than I'd ever seen her. In that moment, I understood something I'd missed all these years. Sometimes, the most valuable gift we can give our children isn't security or stability, or even unwavering support. Sometimes, it's simply the space to find their way back to us on their own terms, in their own time. And Olivia had found her way back, not to the mother I had been, but to the mother I had become. The morning of Olivia's wedding dawned with a perfect clarity that seemed almost scripted. Soft golden light filtered through the mist rising from Hawthorne's gardens. Birds called to one another from the ancient oaks surrounding the estate, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of roses and fresh-cut grass through open windows. I'd been awake since dawn, unable to quiet my racing thoughts. Today, my daughter would be married in the eastern grove of the estate I had come to call home. Today, I would walk beside her down the aisle, officially recognized as her mother after years of estrangement. Today, everything would change. My phone chimed with a text from Jessica. Everything on schedule. Florists arrived early. Eastern Grove setup nearly complete. Quartet doing sound check at 10. Anything you need? Just make sure the morning room is prepared, I replied. Private performance at 11. Olivia had insisted on keeping our planned pre-ceremony moment, her playing reconciliation for me alone in the morning room. In the whirlwind of wedding preparations, that intimate hour had become the anchor I clung to, the heart of the day amid all the surrounding pageantry. I dressed carefully in my cottage, smoothing the silk of my sage green dress, not the traditional mother-of-the-bride attire, but a color Olivia had specifically chosen to complement the jewel-toned palette of her wedding. My hair I wore loose around my shoulders, with only a touch of silver visible at the temples. Around my neck hung a simple pearl pendant that had belonged to my mother and her mother before her. As I fastened the clasp, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The woman who gazed back at me looked nothing like the rigid, fearful accountant who had lost her daughter's trust a decade earlier. There was a strength in her eyes, a quiet confidence in her bearing that spoke of lessons learned and growth hard won. "You made it," I whispered to my reflection. The bridal suite at Hawthorne, normally reserved for clients, had been transformed into Olivia's preparation space. When I arrived at the main house, I found it bustling with activity. Olivia's friends from the Chicago Symphony were gathered in elegant jewel-toned dresses, a makeup artist was setting up her supplies, and a photographer circled the room capturing candid moments. And there, in the center of it all, stood Olivia in a silk robe, her hair half-styled, looking simultaneously excited and overwhelmed. Our eyes met across the room. The chatter around us faded as she crossed to where I stood. "You came," she said, softly. "Of course I came. Wild horses couldn't have kept me away." I hesitated, then added, "Unless you'd asked them to." A smile flickered across her face at the gentle acknowledgement of our complicated history. "I'm glad you're here, Mom." "Me, too." I glanced around the bustling room. "Do you need help with anything?" "Actually." She touched her hair, partially arranged in an intricate twist. "Tanya started my hair, but she got called away for an emergency with the caterer. I was hoping—" "I'd be happy to," I said, surprised, and touched by the request. "Though I don't know if I remember how to do that French twist you always liked." "Let's find out," she said, leading me to the vanity. For the next 20 minutes, I stood behind my daughter, our eyes meeting occasionally in the mirror as my fingers worked through her hair, twisting and pinning with growing confidence. Around us, bridesmaids and musicians continued their preparations, but in this small shared task, Olivia and I found an unexpected pocket of peace. "Remember when you used to do my hair for recitals?" she asked quietly. "Every single one through high school," I confirmed. "You always insisted on the same style. Pulled back, but not too tight, with a few strands left loose. So the audience could see how hard I was working," she finished with a small laugh. "I was so intense." "You knew what you wanted," I corrected, gently. "That's a gift, Olivia. One I didn't always appreciate the way I should have." Our eyes met in the mirror again, a moment of understanding passing between us. "There," I said finally, securing the last pin. "What do you think?" She turned, her head slightly examining my work. It's perfect, just like I remembered. At 11 o'clock, we slipped away from the bridal suite to the morning room. Olivia carried her violin case, a beautiful hand-tooled leather one I'd never seen before. Wedding gift from Robert, she explained when she caught me admiring it. He commissioned it from a leather artisan in Italy. The morning room glowed in the late morning light. I'd arranged the furniture so that a single armchair faced the area near the piano where Olivia would stand. On the small table beside it sat a crystal carafe of water and a box of tissues, Jessica's thoughtful addition. Should I sit? I asked, suddenly unsure of the protocol for this private performance. Olivia nodded, removing her violin from its case with practiced care. It wasn't the instrument from her youth, but a far finer one. A genuine Guarneri, I guessed, though my knowledge of violins remained limited despite my recent studies of music theory. I started composing this piece about a year ago, she said, positioning the violin under her chin. After Robert proposed, I was thinking about beginnings and endings, about cycles of distance and return. She drew the bow across the strings, and the room filled with sound, a low, melancholy melody that spoke of loss and longing. As the piece progressed, the theme evolved, growing more complex, occasionally dissonant, but always returning to variations of that original motif. I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me. In its complex harmonies, I heard echoes of our shared history, the struggles, the misunderstandings, the painful silences. But underneath it all ran a steady, persistent current of connection that had survived despite everything. The final movement shifted into a brighter key, the melody opening up, becoming lighter, more hopeful. It didn't erase the earlier complexity, but transformed it, incorporating the dissonance into something new and unexpectedly beautiful. As the final notes faded, I opened my eyes to find tears streaming down my face. Olivia lowered her violin, her own eyes glistening. I struggled to find words adequate to the moment. I know, she said simply. I needed you to hear it before anyone else did, to understand. I rose from the chair and crossed to her, pulling her into a careful embrace, mindful of her violin and her wedding attire. I understand now, I whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. She pulled back slightly. That's the thing, Mom. I never actually gave up. I just didn't know how to come back after walking away for so long. Sometimes the hardest journeys are the ones that lead us home, I said softly. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotions, standing with Frank in the bridal cottage, waiting for our cue. The procession of musicians playing Olivia's composition as guests seated themselves beneath the ancient trees of the eastern grove. Robert at the altar, his face lighting up as Olivia appeared between Frank and me. We walked together down the aisle strewn with deep blue and purple petals, each of us holding one of Olivia's arms. When we reached the altar, the celebrant asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Frank and I exchanged a glance, then spoke in unison. "We do." I had worried the moment might feel performative, a gesture for appearances rather than a genuine sentiment. Instead, as we both kissed Olivia's cheek and stepped back, I felt the rightness of it to my bones. We had both given her life, shaped her journey, loved her in our imperfect ways. And now we were both setting her free to begin her next chapter. At the reception, Frank and I delivered our joint toast as planned. We spoke of Olivia's determination, her passion for music, her capacity for love. We shared stories that made the guests laugh and others that brought tears to their eyes. And when we raised our glasses to the bride and groom, our voices blended as if we'd rehearsed for weeks rather than hours. Later, watching Olivia and Robert share their first dance, in Hawthorne's grand ballroom, I felt a presence beside me. "You've created something extraordinary here," Frank said quietly, surveying the transformed space with its jewel-toned lighting and floating lanterns. "Hawthorne under your direction. It's magical. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by the compliment. William Reynolds told me about the ownership transition plan. He continued. That's quite an accomplishment, Eleanor. You should be proud. I am, I admitted. Though today I'm mostly proud of her. I nodded toward Olivia, radiant in her husband's arms as they moved across the dance floor. As you should be. Frank hesitated. She gets her artistic soul from me, perhaps. But that steel in her spine, that clear-eyed determination to build something lasting and meaningful, that's all you. Before I could respond, the music changed. The band leader announced it was time for parent dances. Robert led his mother onto the floor while Olivia approached us, extending her hand to Frank. Save the next one for me? She asked me with a smile. I nodded, watching them join the other pairs on the dance floor. A few minutes later, when it was my turn, Olivia stepped into my arms with a grace that belied the years of distance between us. So, she said, as we began to move to the music. The owner of Hawthorne Estate. I smiled. Not yet. But someday, perhaps. It suits you, she said, echoing her words from our meeting in the morning room. This place, this role. I've never seen you more yourself. I could say the same about you, I replied, noting how she glowed with happiness. Robert is a good man. He is. She glanced over to where he stood chatting with Frank. He helped me see what was possible, with music, with us. She met my eyes. Sometimes we need someone outside our story to help us rewrite the ending. As the dance concluded, Olivia leaned in to whisper in my ear, Thank you for creating this day. It's more perfect than I ever imagined. That's what mothers do, I said, simply. They create spaces where their children can shine. Hours later, after Olivia and Robert had departed in a shower of rose petals, after the guests had drifted away, after the cleanup crews had begun their work, I found myself alone in the eastern grove. The fairy lights still twinkled in the trees, and the scent of flowers hung heavy in the night air. I sat on one of the few remaining chairs, gazing up at the star-filled sky visible through the canopy of ancient trees. The path that had led me here, from accountant to estate director, from estranged mother to honored participant in my daughter's wedding, seemed as winding and unpredictable as the garden paths of Hawthorne itself. Yet somehow, against all odds, that path had led me home. Not to a place, but to a truth I had forgotten somewhere along the way. That the most beautiful things in life, relationships, art, moments of connection, can't be calculated on spreadsheets or secured with practical planning. They must be risked, nurtured, sometimes lost, and painfully regained. My daughter had excluded me from her wedding until she discovered who owned the venue. But what she truly discovered was something far more significant. That the mother she had pushed away had become someone new, someone who finally understood what she had always needed. Not direction, but recognition. Not protection, but presence. Not certainty, but love. As I finally rose to leave, a soft breeze stirred the leaves overhead. Tomorrow would bring new guests to Hawthorne, new celebrations to orchestrate, new stories to witness. But tonight, beneath this canopy of stars, I carried the quiet certainty that my own story had found its way back to its truest path. And for that, I had Hawthorne and my brave, brilliant daughter to thank. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.